everyone, welcome to my super easy beginners series in which I'm using a small piece of watercolour paper. This is Saunders Waterford 5 by 7 inches and 3 brushes, a round number 10, a rigger size 2 and a round number 6. I've also got a Cotman palette that is linked in the description. What I'm going to do today is a nice muted sunset boat scene. So I'm going to pop some water on. I'm coming all the way across, nice and even. This is with my round number 10. So I'm looking for a really nice sheen there. Going to start with a little bit of cadmium yellow. So I'm just using the colours that I've got within here. And whatever I'm popping into the sky, I'm going to reflect into the water. I'll rinse my round number 10 off, dab it off. I'm going to load it up with some clean water. And I've got some permanent rose. If you haven't got permanent rose, it is a lovely colour to have. You could use something pinkier like alizarin crimson. Even a cadmium red would work. It would be a slightly different tone, but it would work. So I'm keeping quite horizontal strokes and a little bit of a diagonal coming back and forth across. Trying to preserve some of that yellow. Give my brush a rinse, dab it off into clean water. This one is cerulean blue. So I'm going to bring that through in the middle. Sure that I give it a really good scrub to activate, and I'm going to bring that towards the top. You can blend some of it through into the rose and that's going to create a purple. What you don't want is stripes, so you've got to get a nice balance coming through. Okay, so you can see that I've gone horizontal in the water, a bit more diagonal in the sky. I'm going to swap down to a number 6 now. I want to be a little bit more in control. I'm going to come into some ultramarine blue. So I've dipped the brush into a little bit of water. And then I just want to create a little bit of dark on the horizon. So this is, I've sort of gone 50-50. So 50 water, 50 sky. So I've got that sense of dark on the horizon. I'm pushing the brush down. This is still with the ultramarine blue. You push down, you're in control of that, and I'm doing a little circular motion to just create a little bit of cloud within the sky. And I'm going to pop some darker ripples or shadows within the water just down here. So this is again the ultramarine blue. Give my brush a little bit of a rinse. I'm going to come into a little bit of burnt umber. Now, I don't want that to be too wet, so I'm dabbing that off onto the kitchen towel whilst it's got the colour in, and I'm going to bring that through just very carefully towards that back edge. So it's going to create a bit of a browny grey. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So I'm going to make a little bit of a grey. So I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt umber. If you had something like a Payne's grey, you could use that as well. Or cobalt blue and burnt sienna makes a very nice grey. So I'm going to bring this along just so I've got some distant headland. Nice fine horizontal line. And I want you to vary the height of it in places, so it could be buildings, it could be trees, but I don't want it to be a straight line, so I'm just varying the pressure of the brush just so I'm getting that feel of distant headland. Giving my brush a rinse, I'm going to come in and do some ripples. So I'm going to start with the rose. So I'm dabbing into that. Round number 6, I'm going to do some horizontal strokes. Now the trick with the ripples is to make sure that it's not too strong. If when you come on it looks a little bit too strong, then just spread that bit around. If you have a flat brush, then you can work with that horizontally, and that works quite nicely for ripples. But you can just use a round depending on what you've got. I'm just using what I've said that I will use in this tutorial. It's quite good for you to learn how to use one particular brush. So this is a little bit of the cerulean blue going in now. Just keep loading your brush up with a bit of water. And you want these ripples to be quite straight. It's fairly still water. We're doing a nice calm scene. I'm not going to come all the way back. So I'm just going to fade them out a little bit. Just do a couple more of the rose ones. Then a little bit of the yellow. Just coming through. This is the ultramarine blue. So I can have a couple of darker ones. There was a bit of a white patch here on the paper. I think it's just how it dried with the hairdryer. You can see how you can just cover that up with a few little bits of ripples anyway. If anything's too strong, just a damp brush and blend it through. Doesn't need to be wet, just damp. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, so I'm going to pop 3 boats in now. Want them to be fairly small, so I'm going to come on with the rose first of all. Now the trick is to remember that each of these boats have a horizontal bottom. They're rowboats, so you can just have a curve at the top. Now I'm quite quick at this, so I know that I can do several in one go, but you can do them one at a time. So you've got this little bit of a curve at the top, it comes down a little bit, and then you've got a straight bottom. And then this one is, I'm going to do the opposite way. So it's going to curve here, curve at the top, come down, straight bottom. So I've got 3 pink boats. Give my brush a bit of a rinse, and I'm going to come into the grey. So we're going to basically silhouette them. So one at a time if you're more nervous about doing this, but we're going into wet paint, so I want them to shadow. I don't want them to be a pink boat. Pink's just the base. See that curve at the top? You could just come in with the grey, but it adds a nice tone because you would get some colour reflected from the water. So you just concentrate on getting a really nice shape, that nice flat bottom. We're going to put the reflection in after, so I can have a little bit of a motor on this one. it's up to you what you want on each of these boats. They could just be people, there could be people sat rowing. I'm going to pop a couple of people in this one. So that's a couple of dots for heads and shoulders just in there. And then we're going to have a nice mast. So what I'm going to do now is turn round, because I find it easier to paint a straight line horizontally. One of the hardest things you'll ever do is painting a straight line, because naturally your hand wants to arch when you're painting. So you should in effect go from the shoulder, but actually this little tip of turning it round so you can see the line and trying to keep it as straight as possible really does help. I don't know the technical terms of a boat, but I'm just popping these bits in. I need to go down to the rigger if I want a fine line. So this is my long thin brush. And I can join that one to that one. So there we go. So I'm going to dry this off and then we're going to pop in the reflections. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm just making sure that I've got plenty of colour here. There's an opportunity for you now, and now it's dry, for you to come on and do a little bit more detail on each of these boats. So I can do the top. Just popping in some extra little bits of shadow really. That top edge. A little bit at the bottom. Do not outline it. The temptation to outline is always there, but don't do it. So pop a little bit of extra shadow in there. Okay, so for each of these boats there needs to be a reflection so it grounds the boat. So if I come underneath with the grey, and we're going to mirror the shape like that. Mirror the shape. Mirror the shape. You can see you've got them on a surface now. Need that to be a little bit darker. I'm just taking a bit more paint in. You can mirror a little bit of what you can see above as well. So when you've got straights like this, what's quite good is if you wiggle, you'll get a little bit more of a wobble in there. And you can do the same by just wiggling on the edge of each of these lines a little bit, so that it doesn't look totally still. I'm just going to wiggle through each of those lines. Then if I clean my brush off and I dry it off on the kitchen towel, I can stroke through and just take out little bits of light as well. This helps with the feeling of the surface of the water. Just work through. those little bits of light. You've just got to get it to the right consistency of dryness, and you can just lift out those tiny little bits. It gives it a really nice surface. And then just to connect it all together, so I've loaded my brush with water, I've gone back into the grey. You want a few grey ripples so that it doesn't look odd. You can break through some of this. So horizontal strokes. And then the whole of this looks like it's got the same surface. You can see that coming together. So it's a really simple, effective way for you to try water. You don't need to go too far back. You can do a couple of little grey ones in the background. So there we go. It's a nice, simple, reflective boat scene. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop you a playlist here and another video here, and I'll see you next time.